This is the brand new Sigma 50mm f2 DGDN, and this is the much loved Sony Zeiss 55mm f1.8. Both of these lenses appear to be small, high quality and versatile, but which is the best? Well, at first glance it's kind of a tough call to make, because when you compare these things side by side, they're roughly the same size and there's only a few grams to separate them in terms of weight, with both options being predominantly made from high quality metal. On closer inspection though, the Sigma is the more feature laden option, including an MF to AF switch and a manual aperture ring. The Zeiss on the other hand, well, it doesn't have any manual dials or switches, besides the focus ring of course. Both lenses offer splash and dust resistance, however, interestingly, the Sigma only offers protection around the lens mount with a rubber gasket, whilst the body itself doesn't actually include any extra protection. The Zeiss on the other hand is the total opposite. The body does include internal protection, but there's no rubber gasket around the lens mount. When switching over to manual focus, both lenses utilize a focus by wire system, but they're both really nice and responsive to use and have a very linear feel to them. The only real difference is that the new Sigma does have quite a long throw to it, meaning that you do have to rotate the dial approximately 180 degrees to complete a full rotation, whilst the throw on the Zeiss is way shorter with only a 90-degree rotation needed. And that, in my opinion, makes it the much more comfortable option of the two. Now, unfortunately, both lenses do suffer quite badly from focus breathing, which is definitely going to be a turn off for videographers. But when it comes down to handing out points for build quality, I think it's fair to say that both of these lenses are really nicely put together and they both deserve a point apiece. However, when it comes to dishing out points for handling, deciding which lens is the better lens will entirely boil down to your own personal preference. For me, the Sigma just edges it here because I personally prefer having the option of manual controls on the lens body rather than having to keep diving into the in-camera settings. However, if manual controls really don't bother you, then you would definitely be happy with either of these options. So when it comes to the point, I'm going to award both of these lenses a point here for handling, and then you can make your own mind up as to which of these lenses is better suited to your personal requirements. But how much did these lenses cost? Well, at the time of launch, the Sigma is going to be priced at $639 or £619 here in the UK, whilst the older Zeiss lens is currently going for around $998 in most stores in the US, making it way more expensive. Here in the UK, the Zeiss ranges in price between £560 and £680 depending on where you shop, which definitely makes it the cheaper option for us Brits. That means clearly for American viewers, the Sigma has the Zeiss beat for price and has to win the point, though this is likely going to vary depending on where you live. So my advice would be to shop around a bit and find out for yourself which of these options is the better one for you in terms of value for money. When it comes to autofocus, in good lighting conditions, both lenses are rapid to focus with absolutely no signs of hunting. In low light conditions, however, both lenses did start to slow ever so slightly and they took a little bit longer to lock onto the target, but ultimately neither lens showed any major signs of hunting and they were completely usable. When shooting wide open in high-speed continuous mode, almost all of the shots I took with these lenses were sharp and in focus, with only one or two that were ever so slightly misfocused. And that means that both of these lenses are certainly solid performers when it comes to AF in photo mode, so they both deserve a point. Switching over to video mode, when shooting wide open with these lenses, they were both able to track George as he walked towards the camera at a regular pace with really no issues at all. When repeating the test at a faster pace, again, both lenses constantly kept up focus without any issues. As for AF noise, my camera's built-in microphone did manage to pick up a very subtle amount of purring from the Zeiss lens, whereas the Sigma lens created a weird sort of buzzing sound. When shooting in a real-world scenario, both lenses were more than capable of capturing beautiful-looking video footage. They were both able to focus quickly and accurately, and they also worked well using my Sony a7 Mark IV's IAF and face detection features. Now honestly, with both of these lenses being nearly identical in terms of size and weight, it was pretty difficult to distinguish between the two options on the day. The only slight difference was when switching between manual focus and autofocus, as it is way easier and quicker with the Sigma thanks to the manual switch. But regardless, when it comes to scoring for video AF, I think both of these lenses are solid options for video work and therefore they both deserve a point. In our Bokeh Balls test, when shooting wide open with these lenses at their respective maximum apertures, the slightly larger maximum aperture of f1.8 on the Zeiss means that it generates larger orbs than the Sigma. Despite both lenses producing round orbs at the center, there are a number of issues on both lenses, with both sets of results having a prominent onion ringing effect, haloing, and the orbs quickly turning into a flattened cat's eye shape towards the corners of the frame. At the very edges, there's even some slight traces of what looks like chromatic aberration on the Sigma lens results. As for general bokeh quality, both lenses create a nice, soft, pleasing bokeh, though somewhat unsurprisingly, the Zeiss creates a slightly thicker and softer defocused area thanks once again to its wider maximum aperture. So for me, the Zeiss just edges it in this round and wins the full point. In our lens flare test, overall the Sigma does a better job of protecting against ghosting compared to the Zeiss, though do expect strong artifacting from both of these lenses when shooting into strong direct lighting. However, it pretty much goes without saying these days that both of these lenses come included with lens hoods in the box, and that will definitely help shade the front elements in harsh lighting conditions. On a longitudinal chromatic aberration test, both lenses display similar levels of green colouring above the plane of focus and red or amber fringing beneath it. Just when I found out when I shot some video with these lenses, there really isn't much separating them in terms of photography either, and I really don't have much to complain about here in terms of their performance. Both of these lenses are quick and reliable to focus, which meant that the vast majority of the photos I came away with after the shoot were pin sharp, and even when shooting wide open at the respective maximum apertures, I was really happy with the results. The only thing I really haven't touched on so far is the slight difference between the focal lengths. Obviously, the Sigma is a 50mm lens, whilst the Zeiss is a 55mm lens. Now, the good news is that there really isn't that much difference between these two focal lengths in terms of aesthetics. I mean, of course, the 55mm is going to be slightly more zoomed in than the 50mm, but I really can't say that it made much of a difference when it came to composing my shots. Unlike its bigger brother, the Sigma 50mm f1.4, which I reviewed against this Zeiss last month, this new lens doesn't have nearly as much pincushion distortion, which is good news, and that means that it puts it on level terms with the Zeiss. Though when you zoom into the center, you can see that the Zeiss is just a touch sharper than the Sigma. At the corners, both of these lenses do start to soften out quite dramatically, but this time the Sigma is a touch sharper than the Zeiss. The Sigma also has a slightly shorter minimum focusing distance than the Zeiss, though when shooting wide open at this distance, the Zeiss once again provides a very slightly sharper result at the center, but honestly, there's really not a huge amount in it. So where does all of this leave us when it comes to scoring for image quality? Well, these are honestly some of the tightest margins I have seen for some time now.
That's what she said!
But the nature of this type of test does occasionally require me to split hairs in order to find a winner. And given that the Zeiss is technically the sharper option of the two, I think it should pick up a full point. However, the Sigma clearly deserves half a point as, like I said, the results are incredibly close. That means that the Zeiss takes the win in this matchup, as ultimately it offers slightly better sharpness and better bokeh overall. Plus, for anyone living in the UK or anyone outside of the US where the Zeiss is probably going to be the cheaper option compared to the Sigma, then this becomes an easier conclusion to come to. However, I must say hats off to Sigma for making this new 50mm, as it's still a fantastic lens and arguably the better option for anyone who prefers lenses with a full range of manual controls on the lens barrel. But is this Zeiss the best 50mm-ish f1.8 lens currently available for Sony cameras? Well, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because next week I'm going to be testing out these two lenses against the Sony, Samyang, Viltrox and Yongnuo alternatives to find out. Or if you're watching from the future, then it's probably just here somewhere. So enjoy that.